In this brief video presentation, I would like to discuss some of the considerations for a proper room setting for conducting an interview or, when appropriate, an interrogation. Number one, as private as possible. We all understand the importance of privacy. When we want to share a secret with somebody, we don't do it in a public environment, we do it privately. People have committed a crime or an act of wrongdoing. That's a secret, and they're more apt to share that secret in a private environment. Secondly, you want to minimize distractions. For example, if you're conducting an interview in an office environment and there is a window behind you with the blinds open, you may not want to do that because the subject may see people walking by the room, looking in, or if the view is out to the parking lot, he may see cars going by or things of that nature. So we want to probably close the blinds or reposition the subject as to minimize that visual distraction. And we also probably want to minimize any audio distractions, so we probably want the door closed. We don't want our subject distracted by people talking outside of the room, making noises, laughing, etc. Or, in some instances, the subject may want to tell us something about another person who he knows committed the act that we're investigating, but is afraid to say that for fear someone outside will hear him disclose that information, tell that other person what he said, and he may be concerned about some reprisals. So, door closed, blinds drawn, as quiet and private as possible. Typically, we just have the two people in the room, the investigator and the subject, but a lot of agencies want a witness in the room, a third person, and that's fine. We'll talk about where to position that person at the appropriate time. But suffice it to say, when you start having 5 or 6 or 7 people all sitting around, it's hard to develop rapport with the subject and to make him feel uncomfortable where he wants us to tell us the truth about what he's done, particularly when he knows there's going to be some repercussions for his behavior. The seating arrangement. We always conduct our interviews without a physical barrier between us and the subject, so we can see the subject from head to toe, because we want to see all of their nonverbal behavior. And when there's a desk between us, it also creates a psychological separation. So in all of our interviews, we have no physical barrier between us and the subject. Most of the time, we're sitting about 4.5 to 5 feet away from the subject, close enough so that they know this is important and this is something serious, but we're not so close where we're intimidating or upsetting, but we don't want to be 10 or 12 feet away. That kind of dilutes the process, so about 4.5 to 5 feet away. And in a non-custodial setting, it is most important that we are not blocking their access to the door. In a non-custodial setting, the person is free to get up and walk out whenever they want. So we don't want to impede that in any way whatsoever. In a custodial setting in which the subject is in custody, he's not free to leave anyway. It isn't as critical, but in a non-custodial situation, we don't block their access to the door. So in this photograph, you just see the general layout where the interviewer is facing the subject. There's no physical barrier in between the two of them. Now the question becomes, who should sit closest to the door, the investigator or the subject? We try to have the subject sitting closest to the door to minimize any claims or suggestion of false imprisonment. We don't want to be in a position where the subject claimed he wanted to leave, we wouldn't let him, we block the door in a non-custodial environment. So in this instance, and I'm going to show you 4 diagrams by the way, in this instance the investigator is facing the subject 4.5 to 5 feet apart. The subject has a direct line to the door, direct access to the door. And the O is the observer. Maybe you have a witness in the room, another investigator, a colleague who's off to the side, and we really don't want them talking because we want the subject to almost forget that they're there so that we maintain this sense of privacy. The big green block, of course, is a desk or a table. You may have a situation where you have a lot of documents, paperwork, ledgers, entries, receipts, etc. So we may set up the room where the investigator and the subject are facing each other but sitting parallel to the desk or table, so that the investigator can use the desk or table to lay out certain documents, ask them about certain entries, what this receipt is for, those kinds of things. Again, the subject has direct access to the door. We're not blocking it in any way. And the observer is off to the other side of the room, basically. Let's say you have a circumstance where you're concerned about your safety. You don't know if this person may be doing something crazy or acting up in some way, so we might set it up so we both have access to the door in case there's any problem, we need assistance or anything of that nature. So again, the investigator is facing the subject about 4.5 to 5 feet away, but both the investigator and subject have access to the door. Now, let's take a situation where you have a fourth person in the room. Let's say we're using an interpreter. We have the interpreter sitting next to us. We're still right in front of the subject, and the interpreter is positioned next to us. Let's say you have a circumstance where you have a union rep in the room. We put the union rep on the other side of the table or desk from the observer, but a little bit back from the subject so that the subject is looking to us, the investigator, and we have a little bit of a sense of privacy. And in a situation where you need a parent or guardian in the room when you're talking to a juvenile, we put them off to the side, a little bit behind the subject, similar to where we had positioned the union rep. So, in summary, you want to make your interview interrogation environment as private as possible, minimize distractions, no physical barriers between us and the subject, and we do not want to block the subject's access to the door. For additional details about the room setting, you can consult our book, Criminal Interrogation and Confessions, and take a look at our website, reid.com, where we have investigator tips that talk about room setting, using interpreters, and things of that nature. Thank you very much for taking a few minutes to view this video presentation.